All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Uhuru. And I have a very, very special guest on with us today, Mr. Melvin Foote with the Constituency for African Affairs and CFA. We're going to be discussing um, basically the African diaspora and what we are doing in regards to um, advocating and stopping and putting it into COVID-19 or coronavirus. As you guys might know, me myself, I contracted coronavirus, and it's definitely real. I know there are a lot of conspiracy theories running around on the internet being posted around. No, it's definitely real. So, Mr. Melvin Foote, without further ado, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. The floor is yours.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate always talking with you. Congratulations on your your recovery.
Oh,
And
thank you.
we all have been praying for you, and and wishing you the best. And I think if anybody could have come back from that, you're the one.
Right.
I know that you have this athletic proudness about you, and you have this destination about African people that's real. And I think those are the kind of things that carried you through. So congratulations on your recovery.
Thank you. Thank you. But let's start off with your organization, Constituency for Africa. Let's go into detail as far as so people who don't know, who are joining us and coming in. And guys, as you come into the chat room, please hit that like button and please subscribe if you're new. If you could get into exactly what your organization does and how long your organization has been around for a while and what inspires you and how you're engaging Africa. If you could share that with the people who are you know coming into the chat and who watch
Yeah.
this later on.
Well, first of all, I've been involved in Africa ever since leaving college. So, I've actually been involved on Africa stuff uh, for almost 40 years, or more than 40 years now.
Mm.
And I started out as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer after graduating from Western State College out in Colorado. And I went to Ethiopia in 1973, and I went as a Peace Corps volunteer during the time of the war and the Ethiopian famine. And at the time I didn't know anything about Africa. My parents thought I was going to get eaten by a lion or something, and I didn't know. I when we landed at the airport in Ethiopia, I really thought Tarzan would be there,
Mm.
to pick us up, and ride us to the village into a herd of elephants or something.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about Africa, but I went anyway because I had this feeling about Africa and African people.
Right.
So I've been involved for all of these years in many kind of configurations. I worked for Africare for many years,
Mm.
either director for constituency development and development education, and CFA grew out of that work. My job was to educate Americans about Africare and Africare's mission, which is rural development. And so I moved around the country and really worked at getting the diaspora or Black organizations to support Africare's work. So I was at the AKA conventions, the Links, the Jack and Jill, Alphas, Kappas,
Hmm.
the Black churches. So I was moving around with all these organizations trying to get them to support Africare. And many of them, didn't understand anything about Africa.
Right.
So I decided to build a network of the really Black organizations and use that network to educate Americans about Africa, educate these organizations about Africa, get them linked up so that they're talking to each other. So CFA was actually that network. And we got started in 1990. In 1994, we became an independent organization. That's a long story in itself, but I didn't want to be an independent organization. I was happy as a project of Africare,
Hmm.
but they felt Africare's mission was rural development, and the CFA was political and economic, and that sort of thing. So CFA had to become an independent organization in 1994. And so the mission of CFA is to educate the public about Africa, improve cooperation, coordination among various organizations that work on Africa. It didn't matter whether you were doing development assistance or political advocacy like Trans Africa or churches. It didn't matter. The matter was that you were an African, a diaspora organization interested in Africa. So I became a network among these organizations, just sharing information. My job is just to share, tell you what's going on in Africa. Here's the information, let you know how to access things in Africa. I wasn't trying to tell anybody how to do their job. My
Right.
job was one of just sharing and making sure that Africa was understood by a wide range of Black organizations that work on Africa. And then we work to shape U.S. policy toward Africa. Everybody agreed that we need to work together to have impact on the policy. So CFA's mission was to impact U.S. Africa policy. And so we've been at it, now over 30 years and, had a lot of success. We've actually impacted the U.S. policy to get the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, the trade bill passed. We accessed, we pressured and got the Bush administration, the son, to launch the HIV/AIDS legislation. PEPFAR, that came from us. The AIDS Marshall Plan. We got the Clinton administration to give us Air Force Two and fly a delegation to Rwanda to assess the genocide in '94. So we've had many impacts on U.S. Africa policy. Didn't matter whether it was Democratic or Republican. Didn't matter to me. We need to get America, the United States, to care about Africa. So that's how CFA got started. We're a small organization, always has been small. Money is hard to come by for us because of the agenda.
Right.
The funders look at us and say, hey, those guys might actually succeed in building a constituency to support Africa led by Black people.
Right.
Who pay you for that? That we're not smart enough or knowledgeable enough to fund ourselves. The Africans don't see how to fund a Black organization in the United States. They think the money grow on the trees over here. So you're going to have a hard time getting money really from Africa. Africans really should be funding CFA's agenda in the United States, but they don't
Right.
quite figure it out yet. That's another 10 or 15 years away. That's for your generation to figure out. But that's kind of what CFA is in a nutshell. We're a policy advocacy organization. We're lean, we're mean, we're catalytic. We love to use technology. I'm thrilled to be on this broadcast with you. We
Anytime.
think that this is the only way that CFA is going to achieve the agenda that we're working on. We got to be lean and mean. We got to use technology to our advantage. We got to really empower the next generation fully, not half-heartedly, not telling the young people they need to sit in the other room and listen to us. CFA's objective is to empower the next generation to carry this mission forward.
Guys, make sure you hit the like button as you come to the chat room. If you're just entering, we have the honorable Melvin Foote on with us.
I don't know about honorable. Some say.
Well, I mean, you're as we say, you're an OG in the game. So I'm trying. I gotta. You have a title. We got to give you a title. We're gonna say the honorable or whatever you want to be called. That's what we'll call you, the honorable Mr. Melvin Foote is in the building.
My friend called me Baba. So.
Baba, there you go. Baba Foote. Baba Foote is in the building. Everybody, he's in the building. So COVID-19. Now, it really hasn't, from what we've seen, it hasn't had that much of an impact on Africa like a lot of people wish it would have. It has in regards. So, for example, I was supposed to be in Nigeria in March. I'm supposed to be in Nigeria next month, but I can't go because of the flight. So it seems like Africa's been very proactive in I would say shutting this COVID. I mean, not allowing this COVID situation to run rampant like it is here in America, Italy, or Spain. What are African leaders doing to ensure that they don't experience COVID like we did here in America or in Europe?
Well, I would say that so far, the numbers are relatively modest in many African countries. They're pretty high in South Africa. They're high in Egypt, Algeria, and some other parts of Africa. But the biggest fear is we don't know what we're dealing with. The COVID-19 is not hitting all countries at the same time. It didn't hit the United States. It hit the United States after it hit Italy, after it hit Great Britain. And so the game is not over by no stretch of the imagination. There's also this question about testing in Africa. Very little testing has gone on. So we don't know if it's hitting now. there is a fear that the next 2 to 3 weeks are going to tell the tale whether Africa is going to be hit. But we all know that the infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure in Africa has always been weak.
Mhm.
We tried to get it fixed with the HIV/AIDS resources, but no, it hasn't been fixed. And so many of these countries have deplorable, weak healthcare infrastructure. So if it does hit, if it does hit, it could be catastrophic. We also have large refugee populations. We have a major, call it ghetto if you want to, places like Kibera in Kenya,
Kenya.
that up to 1 million people live in an area that maybe, 1/10 the size of New York. So it's a very, dense, very poor sanitation. People live in a very, very closed environment. The bulk of the African population are actually working in the informal sector. That means that they're almost like day laborers. If they don't work, they don't eat. Where is the cushion to make sure that people are secure? So Africa, while on the one hand, there's also the reality is that Africa's population is very young. Something like 80% of the population in Africa is like under 40 years old. 35 years old or younger. And so, as we can see that this virus is largely hitting the ones who are dying the fastest are certainly the older population. And so Africa has a young population, which plays in its advantage. So I think that the reality is, we should not let up at any stretch of the imagination. Many of the African leaders are taking proactive actions. The Ghana president came out yesterday and said he's going to build 80 hospitals in the country, right away. Rwanda is taking a real progressive. South Africa is doing well. So many of the African leaders are, in fact, alerted to it, and they are taking precautions the best they can. But Africa simply don't have the resources. They don't have the capacity to write everybody a $1,200 check, to tie them over for a minute. While on the one hand, we applaud the fact we're encouraged by the fact that COVID-19 has not hit Africa the way it hit other parts of the world. Many of us who follow Africa are still very, very concerned and frightened.
Okay, guys. Let's see. Any questions in the chat room? Any questions in the chat room? If you guys have a question, please post it. But yeah, it's just weird. Like they're upset that COVID is not affecting Africa because Africa has this stereotype that is disease and pandemics. Everything originates from there. So they are surprised that it's not impacting Africa the same way it's impacting Europe and America. I mean, like you said, some in South. Do you have the numbers for South Africa as far as COVID there, or?
It's very high. It's very high.
Oh,
And, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's a number. When South Africa has a lot of things that's playing against it. One, it is a place a lot of tourists come. So some of the COVID is actually brought in from the outside.
right,
Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, but it also attracts tourists from all over the place.
right,
And we all know that tourism has been one of the ways that the virus has been spread. And then you have a lot of social problems, minors and
right,
people who are transit, from the Sowetos and whatnot, that don't have a lot of protection. So there's many factors involved in it. I say that the president is really on it. He's making all kinds of commitments and following through on a lot of things. So I'm encouraged by the effort in South Africa to stem the pandemic, but we should not feel any comfort that Africa is out of the woods. It's not the
right.
case. And this
True.
virus does not concern whether you're black, white. Doesn't concern whether you speak French or Swahili. It's a human problem, and I think that Africa potentially could still very much so. And if it does hit, I don't think the world is going to react to Africa because the United States is dealing with the United States, and Europe is dealing with the Europe. And so where are these resources going to come to address COVID-19 in Africa? I just don't see it. So we better do everything we can to prevent it encourage Africans to come up with African solutions. And we ought to, the diaspora ought to be supporting it.
Now, and you're the man, so I know you're behind the scenes, and you get all the classified information. What do you think, as far as flights to Africa? So I know, when do you think that might open up? Do you think maybe end of June, early July, or?
Uh, I think that honestly, this is not the year to fly anywhere. If you ask me when is the time to fly to Washington, I would tell you don't fly this year. Don't fly this year. I wouldn't, and I think this year is going to be bad for any travel, certainly any international travel. I have a good friend of mine who's a AME Baptist pastor who wants to take a group to Malawi and Southern Africa. And he called me up. We had the same conversation. And I told him, I wouldn't do it right now. And that was like right at the time the thing was hitting. And he called me back and said, "Thank you.
Mhm.
This is not the time to go. Just too many issues. Too many issues out there. Right. This is the time to do video conference calls. This is the time to be having informational sessions, educating people. I was on a very good call this morning, and the president of Ghana was on the call, and the vice president of Nigeria was on the call, and we're talking just like we're talking now.
Okay.
I think that technology, one of the things that's coming out of this is better use of technology to communicate and to share information. And, and I think this is where we ought to be this year. I'll talk about next year come January.
Okay. Now, Mr. Foote, I promise you I'm not hard headed, but come August, if the door is open, I got to get to Nigeria. I
Well,
just
opinions are like noses. Everybody got one, right?
Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I
But
just
back to my opinion, and I'm a person who go 3 to 4 times a year to Africa, and I'm itching to get back as soon as I can. But this is not going to be the year. I think the airlines are going through some traumatic spasms right now, and it's going to get real bad in the next 2 weeks. Um, and so you may not even have an option, unless you're going to go back on a boat or something, take a slave boat back to Africa or something. But
no.
I'm not. I wouldn't recommend that either.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't recommend that either. So this is not the year to travel. My daughter was in the Peace Corps and got evacuated out of Benin. She's here now and safe and sound. But it was a traumatic, a few days in the process of getting home. And so I think that one would find you would get to Africa and you'll find out that you're in quarantine over there for 2 weeks. A lot of the countries are putting quarantine in place coming off the airplane. It's not like you're going to be able to just, okay, I'm here, welcome. I don't think it's going to be that easy. So I think that this is not the year. This is the year to get organized, to get the diaspora moving in the right kind of direction, and for us to empower our support for our people. We can do that. We can raise money. We can do all kinds of things to help Africa. But physically getting on a plane, doing what we normally do, I don't think this is the year that's going to be an option.
I think come July, if they still have the 2 week quarantine come like July 1, then I'm canceling everything. But yeah, like you said, I just July 1, if they still have like July 1 through like the middle of July, they still have the 2 week you have to quarantine yourself once you get to, Nigeria, then I'm just, because I mean
Yeah.
that defeats the purpose
Yeah.
of even going. Now we were talking about technology. Now May 5th, we have a big event dealing with Africans in the diaspora, fighting against COVID-19. If you could go into details about this event, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the flyer.
Okay. Um, and back in 2017, I went to Ethiopia for the launching of the Africa Center for Disease Control. And it was kind of a historic kind of an occasion. And I was able to represent really, officially from the United States, really. Um, but the launching of building Africa's capacity to address its own healthcare needs and to be able to assess disease paths and that sort of thing. And so John Kingasong is the director of the Africa Center for Africa Center for Disease Control. Brilliant Cameroonian, spent many years at the CDC down in Atlanta, but brilliant guy. Called me up a few weeks ago and said, Mel, we need your help. The Africa Center is the main organization in Africa that's dealing with COVID-19 and dealing with the various countries, making sure that the resources are received and allocated from wherever and distributed, and making sure that this doesn't become the pandemic that we all fear. And so we're going to have this conference call with Dr. Nkingasong on May 5th. So we put together a 2-hour program. It'd be from 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time to 12 o'clock noon. And we're going to have Dr. Nkingasong to give us an assessment of where we are with the pandemic in Africa. All the questions that we talked about earlier, he's the guy to give us a real assessment of how Africa views this and what Africa is doing to respond to it. We're also going to have this conversation about the role of the diaspora. What we as African Americans and other Americans of African descent, African immigrants, and Afro-Caribbean Canadians, and what have you, what is the best thing we can do to help respond to this? Certainly there is material support needed, the gloves and the ventilators and what have you, but there's also some political support. We have to make sure that President Trump doesn't do what he did to the WHO and start attacking WHO. You know, got to blame somebody, blame who? Blame China, blame everybody, but don't blame the president. So we want to have some discussion around what is the role of diaspora to respond to the COVID-19 in Africa. So it should be a very exciting program. Congresswoman Karen Bass, who's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus and the chair of the House of Representatives Committee on Global Health, is going to join us. She's going to come and provide remarks and talk about CBC and really offer support from CBC to Africa directly, But our aim is to put together a panel of experts who can really discuss fully what the situation is in Africa. Let's talk about it in real terms and not in terms of what we want to happen, but let's talk about how prepared the countries are in Africa to respond to this crisis, and then what we can do as diaspora. So we're having people like Dikembe Mutombo is going to be on the call, Dr. Julius Garvey. I think you're going to be on the call, Dynast.
Yes.
We want you on this call, partly because of I had to do some explaining who you are, and I talked about the fact of your passion for Africa. I haven't seen anybody who can match you, old or young, and the fact that you have experienced the virus yourself, and it was down for the count for a bit and made the comeback. I think it's compelling that people also have a chance to hear from you and what you think we as a diaspora can do. So it's going to be an exciting 2 hours. We're partnering with Harvard University, Johns Hopkins, and a number of other entities, all who are focused, who have diaspora engagement interests. And so the aim of this is at the end of the forum to have a thorough conversation, really targeted, aimed at we as Black folks, we as African Americans and other Africans, that we can really talk about it in context that we can actually understand and really leave this call with the understanding about what we can do. We see this as a launching event. We're thinking about a whole strategy of activity to follow this. We have, as a constituency for Africa, we have got to be at the call and beck a call for all critical issues concerning Africa. So our aim here is to launch an effort that we hope will gain currency and gain root. We're hoping that churches, sororities, fraternities, civic and social groups, labor unions, and others will be a part of this call, and we'll hear the call and then let's move forward to generate a tremendous response, both in terms of material. There's a need for technical assistance. We have the National Medical Association, these Black doctors. There's more Black doctors from Ghana and New York than there is in Accra. There's more Black doctors in the United States than there are in Nigeria. And
Right.
so, okay, we're not saying get on the plane and go work in the hospital, but through telemedicine and using the technology again, we think we can find a more productive way that the diaspora can also help. Even from sitting over here in the hospital, you can still help with various procedures and various activities that go on the continent. So we want to use this as a chance to help to embolden the diaspora participation in Africa. I see it beyond COVID-19. It's all part of the effort to unify the diaspora in support of Africa.
Okay. Now, Mr. Foote, for people who want to engage Africa and they don't know where to get started, because I would say events like this, a lot of people don't have access to or wouldn't know about, and it's kind of hard to find these events and gatherings where people on your level are engaging Africa. Like, how would someone get started?
Well, I disagree with that because I remember when I first got started. And when they told me I was going to Ethiopia, I thought Ethiopia was in the Middle East because of the Bible stories. I
Right.
thought Ethiopia was in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Ethiopia. And so I said, I don't want to go to the Middle East, you know. And so I couldn't Google back then. There was no such thing as a Google. I can find out right now within 10 seconds. Where's Africa? Boom, it's right there. But back then, there was no Google. So I had to actually go over to the library, find an atlas, look at a map in the atlas, and Ethiopia is in the heart of Africa. Wow. So there's no excuse in my mind for a person not to, have access to information because it's at your fingertips. Now, I would say that, the constituency for Africa, the best way to follow me is on Facebook or LinkedIn. And I'm constantly putting out stuff. There's all kinds of sources out there, africa.com, allafrica.com. There are tons of them. And
Mhm.
so there are people like yourself, Dinas, who are just a walking encyclopedia, about what's going on the continent. There's all kinds of us out here now who know Africa, who experience Africa, could tell you about job opportunities, could tell you about investment opportunity. So I think if a person say, I don't have a clue, something is wrong here. That's what I truly feel. So I would say as a contact point, I put myself out there. I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm not looking for to babysit, and I'm much more for the graduate level participation, if you know what I mean. I'm not the okay. How many countries in Africa? Maybe you can handle that one. But I think there's a
No, no,
lot of
no, I don't have time for that one either. I don't have time for that one either.
there's a lot of sources out there. Every community, everywhere I go, I run into all kinds of folks who are engaged on Africa. We need to have a CFA kind of network in Atlanta. We need to have one in Birmingham. We need to have one in Chicago. I just never had the resources to really put it together. But we need to have a network that's primarily concerned with what I do nationally. And I educate Americans about Africa. I improve cooperation and coordination among the organizations that work on African issues. I shape the U.S. policies on Africa. It's pretty clear to me. I think the same thing needs to happen in every one of these local communities,
Right.
but it needs to be almost self-contained, self-financed, self-contained, and let us be an advisor to it, a technical aspect to it. There's all kinds of brilliant young people in this country. And
Right.
one of the things that inspire me is all the young people I meet who are 30 and under, both here and in Africa. The Young African Leaders Initiative that President Obama touted, that came from me. I wrote the paper for that. I'm
Oh
proud of
wow.
that.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
proud of I'm proud of that one. I wrote the paper and provided the framework for it. President took it and said, "Wow, I love this." The young Black American president. Of course, he recognized the need to support young people in Africa, and that became my work became the seed for Yali. But I've also encountered tons of young people here who are in technology, who are doing all kinds of interesting things on college campuses, who are ready to go. They're shovel ready. It's not like they need a whole lot of hand holding or anything like that. The only question is, how do we organize ourselves? And it should be easy. It should be easy. Um, the thing about CFA that's beautiful to me is it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to do it. I get up in the morning. I'm not a battleship. I don't have a big army of staff and all kinds of resources at my disposal. I'm more like a speedboat, and I could
Mhm.
turn on a dime. And
Right.
so I'm able to really. People say, "Well, how do you get involved in all of these things?" I get involved in all of them because I'm involved on the strategic side. And it's not like I got to be involved in the details. I don't need to organize our people when we got churches, we got civic and social groups. I've never seen people organize like Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Who can organize better than them? Delta Sigma Theta, Omega Psi Phi. The labor. We have so much organizing capacity in the Black community. That should not be the challenge. The challenge is lack of. How do we access information? We can help them with that. How do we access opportunity? We can help them with that. How do we provide technical advice? We can do it just like we're doing today. Easy. And I have a whole slew of people who know Africa, former ambassadors and what have you, who will welcome the opportunity to engage with groups around the country. And so we need to just kind of, rather than agonize, we need to organize.
Right. I need to write that down. Instead of agonizing, I need to organize. I need to write that down.
All right, give me credit for it, okay?
I am. I am.
Give me a little credit.
I
I need
will.
to write my book. And I was hoping to get started on it by now, but I'm going to do it by next year. And because I need to share what I've experienced over the years and my time working on Africa, but also I want to give some advice and some structure and some strategy for the next generation that's going to carry the fight forward.
Question. This is a little bit off topic, but what are your thoughts on what's going? Since we're speaking, in fact, it kind of is on topic. Since we're speaking on COVID, what are your thoughts in regards to how Africans are being treated in China right now? Because they're trying to shift, deflect and distract and make it seem like Africans brought COVID to China.
Yeah, well, Africans are being treated bad all over the world, including here.
Right.
What to do? You know, it's kind of hit us right in the face when you saw it with China, especially given China's engagement with Africa. But again, my view is, um, one guy sent me an email. He was so angry. He said, "I'm not going to eat any more Chinese food." What do you think about that? I'll give up Chinese food. And I had to tell him that Chinese food that you're eating is coming from Costco. It's not, you know, but we get mad, and we easy to get mad. So I think the African countries have taken some serious steps. You got ignorance in China, like you got ignorance anywhere else in the world. You
Right.
got ignorance in South Africa. Where
Right.
blacks are kicking out other Africans. What
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
ignorance is that? And I see ignorance in the black community every hour. All I go up from my run every day, I see some ignorance on a daily basis. We have a lot of work to do to love ourselves. I see, black folks are, I don't need to talk about the hair. I don't need to talk about the dress. I don't need to talk about our behavior.
Right.
We just do so many things that are against us that show that we hate ourselves. We hate who we are. And some of this is a residual of the slavery, you
Right.
know, where we have to provide a certain image and all of that. We have a lot of work to do. But I don't think we ought to get totally sidetracked by China. China was, they're taking some steps to deal with the problem they have in China. That's not going to solve the problem. People believe what they believe. And if you, stigmatize a certain group of people as the one who has coronavirus, sure enough, oh, let's get these blacks out of here. And, the awful sort of thing. But I mean, I see awful things happening to the black people everywhere, every day. So I don't want to think that China has the only one that has the problem when there's problems even within Africa itself, where Africans are killing other Africans, and
Mhm.
because they're not of a certain ethnic group or um, the Boko Haram stuff. we have a lot of work to do. So that's my take on it.
When do you think, Mr. Phil, when do you think America is going to get, I guess, if there's even such a thing, when do you think we're going to get back to normal, if there's such a thing?
I think that first of all, it's not going to happen till after the elections.
Hmm.
I don't think the Democrats are going to allow us to get back to normal anytime soon. I don't anticipate that happening. They want this to happen under Trump's watch. And, so of course, Trump is trying to do everything possible to paint a picture that, hey, we back to normal over here. We back business as usual. Everybody eating, everybody's back to normal. Well, we're not ready for that either. So I expect we're going to have until after November.
Hmm.
I don't see any normalcy politically. The Democrats cannot allow the U.S. economy to recover and business back to usual, if you will. And
Right.
then Trump is going to try to make it happen like about now. He blasted the Georgia governor for opening up, but at the same time, he told him to do it. He was the one who told them to, go back to work, open up your states. And then he felt like, wow, if this goes badly, they're gonna blame me. So he turned around and said that he was against what the Georgia governor Kemp did. But at the same time, wink, wink, and he's trying to paint a picture that we're going to recover. But this is a medical problem. This is a pandemic. It's not a political problem, and until we deal with the parameters of the medical problem, to me, we don't have a solution. I, for one, am not going back to get my hair cut like you are. You know, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to no restaurant and have me a favorite dish. I'm not
Uh-huh.
going to do it until I feel several weeks have passed and the numbers have completely went down and a vaccine is on the horizon and some security. Other than that, I'm okay eating a bowl of rice a day.
Uh, I made spaghetti. If you want, some, I got some spaghetti at the house. I just made it. I got some spaghetti. If you want some, it's good. I got some spaghetti. I just made it.
you know, and we're
Oh,
learning a lot about ourselves in
right.
this process. We're learning. I read a lot. I'm reading a whole lot. I read a lot more than I'm normally able to read because I don't have time to read more than 2 or 3 pages a day. But now I'm reading Susan Rice's autobiography, Tough Love, right now. And I've known Susan from the time she's been in Washington, and she's a tough cookie. But the book really does explain who she is. So I'm able to really get into some of that. I'm also able to reach out and have conversations with a lot of people who I haven't been able to talk to, a lack of time.
Right.
Um, and I think I see a lot more very good educational forums, online. Every day I got 2 or 3 of them, and wow, I'm involved in a conversation with some of the people who I really want to hear from, who are really the top experts on health and top experts on Africa and top experts on a lot of things. A lot of this is available. Really, all one has to do is really do some research, and so it's a tremendous period to learn uh, about it. We're also thinking in terms of organizationally, what should CFA do going forward? And I personally think that we've always been the first one to embrace the fax machine, really the internet, because we never had the resources to have a big staff. So we always looked at the technology. So I'm looking at this way of communicating as the future. This is what it is, and I think this really is appealing to the next generation because this is your technology, your generation, that's going to allow us to communicate in real time with African people around the world. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Mr. Lindsay has a question. What, if any, retirement programs are in place for members of the diaspora to retire in, say, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, or Liberia, especially for baby boomers? Do you?
I think you're probably better informed on that than I am. I know there's a lot of African Americans who have resettled in Ghana. And some of them have searched their DNA and found out that the DNA, heavily Ghanaian and that sort of thing. And with the year of return last year, many have opted to go back and lived in Africa. Many are doing very well, Um, I think this is a time of reflection. On the one hand, this is our country. We paid the price to be here, and we're Americans. I'm born here. My father was born here. My grandfather was born here, and so we have a stake in America too. It's not like this is a bad country. It's a great country in many respects. Um, you know, but we also are African.
Right. Mm.
That's why they call us African American. We love Africa and we love America, and we should love Africa. We should love America. But I think we should be as comfortable in Africa as we are here. But that's going to take a while. Some of the countries are much further along than other countries. Um, Ghana for me is, okay, I see Ghana, Senegal is doing very well. There's many countries. Nigeria is your country, so I can't say anything bad about Nigeria, or this call is over. But the president was on a call this morning, and really it was wonderful. It was a wonderful call. The vice president of Nigeria was on the call this morning. And had some really interesting things to say about how Nigeria is approaching the COVID-19, and but also there's a call for us. But before we go to Africa, we've got to know Africa. We got to know something about it. I would say that the average person who's feeling the emotions, you just can't get on a plane and say, I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to be happy in Africa. Wait till you hit the airport in any one of these cities in Africa, and wait till the culture is going to hit you right in the head. You got to take some time. I would tell young people, think about the Peace Corps. My daughter was Peace Corps. I was Peace Corps. The great way to learn about Africa, whether you're going to like it or not, go with you. Go with you on some of your visits to the continent. It's a good way to to get a chance to get a feel for the culture, what you're facing, what the upside of it is. Are you able to? I don't want people to go to Africa that don't have anything to offer. A lot of people
Mr. Foote, repeat that again. Repeat that again. Repeat what you just said.
Yeah, I don't want people to go to Africa who don't have anything to offer.
Right.
Don't have any technical skill, don't have any money. What you gonna do in Africa? Well, I'm gonna go there. I can go, work in the store. Well, Africa has a lot of people who can do that. There's no shortage of people who can do that, and they could do it a lot better than you or I can.
Right.
And so I think if you're going to make the commitment to go to Africa, you ought to have made the condition, the commitment to, have engineering skills, have marketing skills, have some technical skills, healthcare skills, educational skills, so that you can actually contribute to Africa. And I wouldn't go to Africa, really. I don't believe to go to Africa to make money. Sure, there's a lot of people who are in Africa, African Americans who've gone to Africa and doing very well on the economic front, and that's great. But I think for the average person, I myself am not a wealthy guy, never have been, and I assure you, when I get ready to check out of this world, I have enough to cover my costs, but it's not like I got $1 zillion, and but I do. If I decide to go to Africa, I want to be able to buy a house. I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to be able to hire some people, start a business, to do some things. But too many of us are already in a bad situation, and we think that we can go to Africa just like going to heaven or something. No, don't have anything to offer. We can't help build the country. We don't have anything to offer Africa. The first thing getting off the plane, they get to look at you and say, well, that brother or that sister really does have skill that they can apply to the betterment of the countries in Africa. So that's an important lesson. So if you're thinking about it, for young people especially, start building your skills, build your capacity, with the ideal being that I'm going to settle in Africa. By that time you've gone to Africa 2 or 3 times, you build a lot of friendships in Africa, you're ready to go. But if you think you're going to just get on the airplane and go to Africa, I'm afraid that it's more of a fairy tale.
I'm glad you set the record straight on that. And Philip, I mean, the best advice I can give you, Phil, is go to Africa, acquire land, and start building. I wouldn't wait on the government um, to come roll out special programs for baby boomers and to
Yeah,
encourage the diaspora to retire in Africa. You just that's
I like
something you got
that
on
my
your own.
approach has been, I must have gone to Africa. I don't know how many times in my lifetime, but well over 100, maybe 150 times that I've flown to Africa. And I
How many
think
times?
every time somebody else paid for it, most of the time I'm going business class. I don't go now unless it's a business class. You know,
Uh-huh.
I don't. You go. I heard you back with the goats and chickens, but not me.
Oh, hold on. See, I've upgraded. I was coach. Now I'm Delta Comfort. So I'm Delta Comfort now,
Okay,
and then we're gonna
okay,
move up to Delta One. Listen, soon we're gonna go Delta One soon. So right now I'm at Delta Comfort. Delta Comfort.
okay.
That's where I'm at right now.
All right, all right. Well, I like get something about being Baba. When you get to be Baba, you should
Right.
fly business class.
Right.
Once you get to Baba status, you should go business class. But seriously, I've gotten other people to really pay my way over, and a lot of times you got honorarium attached to it and whatever else. But uh, at this stage. But as a young person, you want to go any way you can. Peace Corps, Crossroads, whatever. Go and experience it and all of that. Go to the festival. But as you start to build your credentials, sure, you go any way you can. If you could get the U.S. government to pay your way over there through a program or something, so be it. If you can get a church group to take you over there, so be it. Go any way you can. And I just think that everybody ought to, definitely ought to go one time. How
Right.
can you say you're an African American and you've never been to Africa? You know,
You
so
got to repeat. You got repeat that again. People
yeah,
need
you
to.
can't. If you're gonna call yourself an African American, you must go to Africa. You
Uh-huh.
must have, you must have tasted the food. You must smell the air. You must tasted the culture.
Mhm.
That's essential for an African American.
I'm gonna
Don't go
write
to
that
your
one
grave
down too.
not having gone to Africa.
I'm gonna write that one down too. I'm gonna give you credit.
Hey,
Hold on,
give me
hold on.
credit.
How you gonna call yourself an African American and not go to Africa?
Yeah, don't even go there. And
All right, so
so,
we'll take a couple super chat questions. So if you guys have a question for Mr. Foote, Mr. Foote has a very busy schedule. We'll take a couple questions. So if you have questions, go ahead. How can you call yourself an African and not go to Africa?
yeah.
Mr. Foote, this is my okay. So I got a question. So they evacuated your daughter from Benin to America because of COVID.
Right.
But this is okay. Now, logically explain this to me. There have been way more COVID cases in DC than all of Benin. I think. I could be wrong, but I think. So would it be safer in Benin?
Uh, you know, when you talk about U.S. government, you got to think about an abundance of caution. You know,
Okay.
you got to think about abundance of caution. All of these young people who are Peace Corps volunteers have parents back here. Many of them, the volunteers are a different kind of, to be a Peace Corps volunteer, you have really got to be independent. You have got to be a self-starter.
Right.
So a lot of them have parents, like my parents were, they're concerned about their daughter or their son who is over in Africa. And boy, with this virus going on, so Peace Corps mission, and I think of I give them kudos for making the decision was to evacuate all Peace Corps volunteers worldwide, not
Okay.
just in Spain. They
Okay.
evacuated Peace Corps volunteers worldwide, and they did it in a very efficient manner. Now my daughter had to fly to get back from Benin. She had to fly to Turkey, to Los Angeles. She was Abidjan, Turkey, Los Angeles, and then back this way.
Mhm.
Wow. I
Yeah. So
mean,
she flew Turkish Airlines. She flew Turkish Airlines there.
I'm not sure which airline she took. I think she took whatever they did. Peace Corps was really working it to get these volunteers home, and then when she got home, she had to be quarantined for 2 weeks at a hotel.
Oh
And
wow.
I had a chance to pick the hotel, so of course I picked one to my liking.
Hmm.
And it worked out well. It was just out of abundance of caution. And so the last thing you wanted back, especially if you go back to that time, the last thing you wanted was all of a sudden COVID-19 is spreading in West Africa,
Right.
and airports were closing and countries were closing their borders and all this kind of thing. And that you don't want that. They've done the same thing with all of the U.S. Embassy non-essential personnel. They've been evacuated. And so I applaud Peace Corps. I think it was very forward thinking, and I thought they did a superb job of managing the process.
Perfect. So what we'll do, Mr. Foote, we'll go ahead and close out. Do you have anything you'd like to share in closing, and how can people reach you as well?
Well, I hope that everybody will be able to call on May 5th, Tuesday, May 5th. More the merrier, because it's going to be a tremendous informational call. You can reach me. The best way is follow me on Facebook if you can. My Facebook page is filling up fast, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, and then you can reach CFA's website. It's not very good. CFA-network.org. One of the things that I got to get fixed is my website. I have the worst website out here, I think. I need some of you young bucks and young Turks to come and help the brother out. Help me get this website together. I need the stuff that you got. I need the stuff that you got. That may sound kind of far-fetched to you, but that is the problem of Black organizations. We don't have the funding that we need. We don't have the support coming even from the people who love us. So we have got to find a way to empower the next generation to take over the technology, because the future of CFA is going to be this. This is actually the future of CFA, communicating virtually through the diaspora.
Mm-hmm. All right, everyone. Thank you. Let me ask you this last question, Mr. Foote, before we go. When you first started engaging Africa and going to Africa, did people think you were crazy?
Oh, absolutely. My father thought I was going to get eaten by a lion. And I was like, no, I'm not. But really, I didn't know for sure, because I didn't know what I'm going to be faced with. And back then, 1973, and you want to go to Africa? I mean, all we knew about Africa was famine, corruption, Idi Amin, and apartheid. We knew anything else about Africa. And then of course, we knew the Tarzan movies that we all watched on Saturday. So we thought that Africans were like that, And so, of course, the people who love me here, my family, were very concerned. And I was the first one in my family to get a college degree. And so my father was a janitor at Sears and Roebuck's, and he wanted me to get a job as a shoe salesman at Sears. He said, you got a degree, they got a management training program here, and you can sell shoes. Could you imagine me selling shoes? But so, there was very little information about Africa. There was very little knowledge about Africa. I give myself an A+ in terms of courage, because I was scared. I didn't know. And to take off to go to Africa and not have any idea about Africa, not know anything about the continent, took a lot of courage. And I would say that the young people who are thinking about going now, you're going to go much better informed. Call me up. I'll be happy to brief you, be very happy to brief you and happy to, give you a network of people to be in touch with, So there's a lot more help available today than it was when I first got involved.
Okay. People are saying that your Facebook page isn't allowing followers, so you might need a second Facebook page.
That what they say?
Yeah, that's what they say.
A lot of people want to get on. I know. I try a constituency for Africa.
Okay.
I got two pages. One is my name, Melvin Foote, and the other one is constituency for Africa. Maybe that one will let you go. And then the other option, my email is mfoote, MFOOTE 2420 at AOL.com.
And Miss Susan in the my sister Susan in the chat room said she'll help you with your website.
Is she serious about that? Many people have told me that.
Now, Susan, are you serious, Susan? Susan, are you serious? Susan, you serious? Susan's serious. Susan doesn't play. In fact, what I'll do after this, I'll exchange info and
you make the virtual introduction, and let me see her bio too. I want to see if she's serious or not.
Okay, she's been on the tours with me to Nigeria, so
Oh, really?
Listen.
You know a little.
I will. I'll vouch for Susan. I'll vouch for Susan. I'll vouch for Susan. So I'll connect you guys via email. I'll vouch for Susan.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Hope you guys appreciate it. Make sure you go to dynastymir.com, like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, family. Peace.